The Supreme Court seems skeptical of a major part of the president's immigration agenda. That would be the ban on birthright citizenship.
This issue is such a big priority for the president. He showed up for arguments, a historical first. It was really unusual to have an audience not singularly focused on the attorneys and the justices. Here to deconstruct what happened inside the courtroom is the Hill's legal guru, Zach Schoenfeld. Hiya, Zach.
Good morning.
So it was so fascinating that the president chose to show up in the courtroom. Where was he? What happened?
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been in the Supreme Court courtroom, the president, he was in the first row of the public gallery, but that's only in the back half of the courtroom. The first half of the Supreme Court courtroom is reserved for Supreme Court bar members, the actual arguing attorneys, the justices' guests. So that left Trump in the normal spot where any party at the Supreme Court who decides to come to oral arguments sits, and that is the first row of that gallery. But it left him about, I don't know, maybe 30 feet or so back from the justices and his own attorney. And that's why it really seemed that we saw the president, not be able to do a whole lot. I saw him sitting there mainly stone-faced, sitting in his seat, just listening to the proceedings. And it was very different from when I'd been in court with the president back when he was facing trials in some of his personal matters, in which he was actually sitting at the counsel table alongside his lawyers. And when he did that, I mean, he was passing notes and a very active participant. But yesterday, he was forced to just silently listen and watch.
So, Zach, the president was there for a little more than 90 minutes. He heard the Solicitor General's arguments, a little bit of the ACLU lawyers' arguments in this case. Did he react at all? Were you able to see him from where you were seated? And did any of the justices recognize his presence there?
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that question first, and that is, there was no moment where I even really noticed any significant emotion or reaction from the president. There was even a moment when there was laughter in the courtroom when the Chief Justice was pressing the government on this idea. Basically, he made a joke about saying, it's a new world, but it's the same Constitution. The whole room erupted in laughter, but I was looking at the president. He kept a straight face, did not laugh alongside the courtroom with him. Now, Corey, you also asked, did it impact the argument? I'm not so sure, but I will say it was notable two things to me. First of all, I mean, on the bench, it was a pretty friendly day on the bench. Sometimes it can get pretty feisty between the justices, but they were, letting each other speak, and it was pretty friendly vibes. And then also the other thing I noticed is some of the justices kept asking policy questions, would let the government's attorney lay out Trump's policy aims on birthright citizenship. And then the justice would follow up and say, okay, but that has no relevance to the actual legal question in this case, right? And of course, the president was in the audience to hear it.
Zach, we talked about the skepticism among some of the justices. Here is Elena Kagan.
So the text of the clause, I think, does not support you. I think you're sort of looking for some more technical, esoteric meaning.
You obviously put a lot of weight on subject to the jurisdiction thereof. But the examples you give to support that strike me as very quirky.
So, of course, and then that was Chief Justice John Roberts. So both sides of the divide, the political divide here, the conservative justices, the liberal justices, mostly on the same page.
That's right, Hillary. And this really does come down to the text of the 14th Amendment, this key phrase, because the 14th Amendment says anyone born on U.S. soil and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a citizen. And so it is that phrase, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, that is at the center of this battle. And I mean, you heard it there from Justice Kagan, pretty much saying outright as she reads the text of the amendment, you see it there on your screen, she doesn't see it there in the text. And then you heard there from the Chief Justice, that was a comment he made pretty early on in the argument, saying that, everyone agrees there's some exceptions for birthright citizenship, for example, the children of diplomats. But you heard it there from the Chief Justice saying, going from that and making the leap to saying that the children of people in the country illegally don't get citizenship is a big leap.
Zach, I know some of the justices asked about what would happen if this is ultimately struck down. I believe it was Amy Coney Barrett who asked, or who said this could be a messy process. One of the justices said, well, what would you do if you're in a hospital then if we strike this down? How would you go about enforcing or finding out whether someone has a parent who was born in America? What did you make of those sort of passages in terms of the questioning?
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting lines of questioning from Justice Barrett. There was someone from Justice Jackson as well asking if pregnant women would have to come in for depositions. And it gets into, even though with the president's executive order, there's a lot of cases that seem, black and white, there are some edge cases of immigrants, in pretty unique circumstances where there might be questions of, does the president's executive order apply? And that's why you saw Justice Barrett talking about the word abandoned, I think she used at one point.
It was so interesting because the Chief Justice made this one quote that everybody kept repeating about the government's New World argument, saying, well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Zach?
And I think when you heard the Chief Justice say that pretty early on in the argument, I mean, if you were D. John Sauer, the government's lawyer up there at the lectern hearing that, wouldn't want to hear that.
All right, Zach
Thank you,
Schofield.
Zach.
Zach, we appreciate it. As always, of course, you can read Zach and Eloise's piece in today's edition of The Hill and find it at thehill.com.